I haven't met our guest yet, Chapin Flynn, SVP Data Advisor from Mastercard, but you're also part of an organization I've heard of called Data for Good. And is that what we're going to talk about, the social good of data?
Yeah, it is. I have to say, Jim, it might not be anything as cool as Abdul was talking about with rogue IoT and misbehavior detection, but yeah, hopefully.
I think leaving us on a positive note, man, is the way to go. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, sounds great. I will share my screen. And Jim, you can let me know if we're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm all ears and I can see you.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, as Jim said, good afternoon and thank you all for joining. My name is Chapin Flynn. I work in Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth, which is Mastercard's primary philanthropic arm, and I really look after our data for social impact initiatives globally. So that's kind of the frame of today's conversation. I felt like I should start maybe with a quote from Jeffrey Moore, who's a management consultant and theorist, and he said, "Without big data, you're blind and deaf in the middle of a freeway." I thought that was a very interesting and very visual way to start the presentation, because most social impact organizations are standing in the middle of a freeway with very good intention, without the ability to see or hear. There are a few exceptions to that, but that's really where social impact organizations sit today. They don't use big data. I don't know if anybody had a chance to go to the keynote kickoff this morning, but our keynote speaker from Halliburton did an amazing job of even teasing out the question of what is big data and how many folks he could ask that question of and how many different answers he'd get. So I think many social impact organizations don't know much beyond, I should probably be doing more of that. So today we're going to be talking about what we in the Center for Inclusive Growth have been doing to drive data for social impact, and perhaps how you could join us in that journey. And so I will very briefly, just to set things up, talk a little bit about what is the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth. I'll very quickly get into what is data for social impact, talk about some use cases to highlight how that manifests itself, and get into what you as data practitioners might be able to do to give back, and open it up for a short Q&A at the end. So the Center for Inclusive Growth, I'm not going to read this whole slide, but at Mastercard, what we look at is we want to advance the equitable and sustainable economic growth and financial inclusion around the world. And we do that via a whole bunch of different mechanisms. The Center was founded in 2014. To give you an example of what we do and how we think about this, we committed to delivering 500 million access for 500 million people, universal financial access to 500 million individuals by 2020, which we did. We accomplished that, and so we then set a new target of delivering universal financial access to 1 billion people, and we are on that journey now. And so that's the kind of scale and level of work that we do. Also in 2017, we established the Mastercard Impact Fund, which is about a $500 million fund that our team manages and that we use to achieve some of the objectives on the next slide. And so the Mastercard Center for Inclusive Growth really focuses on 4 different areas. The first one is to promote financial security. I just talked about bringing 1 billion people into the financial system. And in order to do that, and the way we think about it is we want to give individuals the tools they need to be productive and resilient in today's digital economy. Another example of how we promote financial security is we have been working with Unilever on a project that was originally called Jazaduka. What we do is we help Kenyan shop owners, small merchants, get access to the funds that they need just to stock their shelves. We heard a story that talked about how these shop owners could sell a couple cases of diapers a week, but they could only afford to buy one. So we worked with Unilever and with those shop owners to help give them access to the funds and goods that they needed to grow their business. So that's an example of financial security. As far as improving the quality of life for all people everywhere. We really focus on urbanization and what cities are doing and how they're doing it to drive inclusive growth. We also look at the economic mobility of workers so that they can navigate the digital economy without being tethered to a particular place or job. And an example of how we do that is we look at things like portable benefits. If I change companies, or if I'm a gig worker, how do I continue to provide benefits for myself and my family without a really onerous cost basis? And the last one, and the one I'm going to spend just about all the rest of the time on today, is leveraging the power of data for good by increasing capacity to solve systemic problems. And it's this data segment that I'll focus on for the rest of our time together. And so I thought I'd start with just, how does Mastercard, how do we at the Center for Inclusive Growth think about data for social impact? And it's really 4 areas. One is, how can we use anonymized and aggregated Mastercard data along with other impacts to drive social change and social impact? And we want to set the tone by the ways in which we use our own data assets. The second thing is, we want to be part of the change. We want to lead, and we want to be very vocal about our thoughts on how data can and should be used. The third one is, the concept of data use in the social sector is still very immature, and we want to help with that maturation, and we will. And I'll talk about each of these on the next few slides. Lastly, we want to demonstrate the power of data for social impact and create some fear of missing out around this. This is we're at a very cool spot in this journey, and we want to create that urgency around it. So I'll jump right into to Mastercard data, and I used one particular item here, which is something that we've built called the Inclusive Growth Score, to highlight this. And we combined aggregated and anonymized Mastercard transaction data with a few other data sources to give a sense for how an area is doing from an inclusive growth perspective. We made sure we were compliant with all of our corporate data responsibility principles and all the other check marks we needed to make sure that we covered here. But it occurred to us that by combining our data with census data, demographic data, other third party, we could give governments and investors a sense for the inclusiveness of the area at a very granular level, right down to the census tract level. And most specifically, we wanted the data not just to be an index, but something upon which policymakers could act to address some of the huge challenges surrounding inclusiveness. And so, just to walk through a small example of that, what you're seeing here is a picture of Florida. I picked one census tract on the West Coast here that was kind of bright red to say, okay, well, what's going on in that census tract? What I did is it's Lee County in Florida, part of Lee County, and pulled out. You can see the inclusive growth score is 31 out of 100, which is quite a low inclusive growth score. And by itself, that's interesting, but I think it gets really interesting when you look at it across the 3 primary drivers of that score, which are place, economy, and community. And we look at the community score, which again is scoring around a 19 and not nearly where they'd want it to be. And again, interesting, but how do you make it actionable? And we wanted to give the user the ability to continue to drill into that data and look at things like what in the community is impacting that inclusive growth score. And it's really comes down to 2 things, which is personal income, which is the growth of per capita income, and it was shrinking when the rest of the U.S. was going up. And when we look at the percentage of females above the poverty line, again, quite low, and the U.S. was at 81.1%. And so this is powered by a combination of census and Mastercard data, and really we want this to help drive decision making at the policymaker level, business level, to say how can we help contribute to inclusive growth in the right way, and give people the measures of data that empower them to do so. So the inclusive growth score is just one of several examples of these types of tools that we're putting out. and they are a key part of our philanthropic efforts. While the use of corporate assets is one way we feel like we help to lead the data for social impact revolution, it's really just a starting point. The next key step in our journey is challenging the status quo and continuing to evangelize for the underserved. We want to be a driving force behind the evolution of data for social impact, and it's for that reason that we did things like made a very public effort around our corporate data responsibility principles and working to drive adoption of those principles in like-minded organizations around the world. We also continue to perform our own research that drives social impact, and we continue to contribute to other third-party research that seeks to highlight data and use data to highlight and address some of society's most pressing challenges. An example of an ongoing project today, I just heard our speakers talking about it a little while ago, surrounds combating algorithmic bias. And we're working on a project to better understand the ways in which algorithmic bias manifests itself in society today, and what we and others can and should be doing to combat that unintended bias. And so I think what we do is we push this out through our own channels and through other media channels to bring awareness to what data can reveal and what it can do to address some of society's biggest problems. And while we feel compelled to lead the charge and use our own data to advance that inclusive growth, it's critical that we expand beyond our own data and our own research and think about how we work with key partners to build the capacity of the social sector. And the way we think about capacity really has three different broad themes: education, matchmaking, and tools. And so education, we think about how are we enabling universities, even high schools in the US and other schools around the world, pre-university schools around the world, to think about embedding data for social impact into their curricula. And I think that's really key. We're working with WashU in St. Louis to do some work on this. We have some work underway with Columbia University, and there's, I think, 2 or 3 partnerships we're getting ready to announce in the next couple of weeks here that talk about how do we put data science for social impact at the heart of what we do, and how do we embed that early in the university learning process. But it shouldn't end there, the education. It should really continue into professional development. And how are we giving people the tools to think about using data to give back, whether that's through social impact organizations, whether that's through their own organizations in the private sector, and making that part of the DNA of the way they think about that approach. I think the second piece really pertains to matchmaking, and what it is how do we connect those with skills in the data sector to those with a need to use data to close gaps and address need in the social impact sector. I think this has a couple different threads. Sometimes that could be just for a one-off project, a small I need help for a couple hours just to get started, and other times it's full-time resource. I need I'm a social impact organization. I need to go hire a data scientist. That junction, the ability for those that organization to find that individual is very bumpy today, and we need to help smooth that out. I think one of our grantees that's doing a really nice job at that is DataKind. They have a network of thousands of volunteer data scientists around the world, and the DataKind team regularly helps social impact organizations to address data gaps and create innovative solutions. And as recently as about 3 weeks ago, they performed an all-weekend hackathon that they call a data dive, where they pulled together volunteers from all over the world to address these issues. So about 200 volunteers helped from a Thursday to a Sunday with the data dive, and they donated over 1,500 hours of expertise during that time. And they came from about 150 different organizations and companies. So I think that's DataKind is doing a great job of starting to create that matchmaking, and we just need to do more of that on a global scale. The last one I'll highlight on this slide, when I think about building capacity of the social sector, is tools and tool development. And this can mean a wide range, everything from open sourcing models on the technical side to something as simple as a social impact organization says, I need to create a business case to invest more in data, or what kind of job description should I use for a data scientist? In that world, in the social impact community, those items are still very immature, and we need to help kind of advance that so that we can really get people off the freeway and out of traffic, or at least give them the view to be able to understand that they are standing in traffic and how to get out of it. And I think data.org, which is another one of our grantees, is doing a really nice job of starting to think through those tools and solutions that they'll bring to the market. And speaking of data.org, they're not just building tools. They recently sponsored the Inclusive Growth and Recovery Challenge, which aimed to catalyze innovative and scalable solutions around the world that were designed to help individuals and communities thrive while building resilience to withstand future challenges. It was really about, now that we're coming out of hopefully this COVID lull, how are we gonna give folks the ability to thrive through that recovery? What they did is they said we're gonna give out $10 million to multiple organizations that have the best ideas for how to do this. So they received more than 1,200 global applications and selected 8 awardees that really demonstrate the power that data can have in driving meaningful social change. So I put all 8 of them up on this slide. I thought it might be interesting just to talk through 2 to demonstrate how powerful data can be within these organizations. So the first one I'll talk about briefly is called Solar Sisters. And the real problem statement that they started with was that Sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest energy access rates in the world. Off-grid renewable energy solutions offer cost-effective, high-quality, and reliable modern energy services to millions of under-electrified consumers in Sub-Saharan Africa. And so they took that problem statement that said lowest energy access rates in the world, but renewable energy solutions are a great fit for those in Sub-Saharan Africa. And what they said is that we're going to recruit, train, and support women entrepreneurs to distribute a range of clean energy products across Africa. And the program seeks to utilize data to evolve the ways in which the women entrepreneurs are targeting potential customers by leveraging data assets and tools such as everything from satellite imagery to socioeconomic estimates. They applied some machine learning models to it and looked at both human characteristics and environmental data and a ton more. They're able to empower these women entrepreneurs to increase their own income, sell more of these off-grid renewable energy solutions, and what that does is also improves the energy access for those in need across the continent while keeping the environmental footprint very low. And so that's a kind of a small example that we hope will grow dramatically over time. Another example is that of Women's World Banking. And they had a great application to the data.org challenge, and I'll just start with their problem statement as well, which is of all working age women globally, over 10% are entrepreneurs. However, those women also often have trouble accessing the credit necessary to grow their business. The unmet credit needs for women entrepreneurs around the world is around $1.7 trillion. And so what Women's World Banking proposed to do was increase credit access for low-income female entrepreneurs by building a technical assistance facility that used innovative lending methodologies. And that facility really sought to mathematically define fairness and build a gender-focused auditing tool, as well as creating an open source library of fairer AI models. And again, just to bring it down to some of the tooling that they're using, they're using Bayesian classifiers, they're supporting vector machines, they're using linear and nonlinear regression models. They're taking a look at advanced adversarial debiasing networks and models, and more. And they're going to pilot these in 6 markets around the world in the coming 2 years. So I thought just by highlighting 2 of these 8, you kind of get a sense for these massive problems that exist in the market, and how the data tools and techniques that everyone's been talking about all day today can be brought to solve some of those really big challenges. So these are just 2 of the 8 awardees that demonstrate the power of data for social impact. And with that, I'll kind of turn it back to you and thinking about what we can all do as practitioners to think about how we can give back. And I think what I really looked at is leveraging your organization's assets. Sometimes those can be financial, sometimes it can be human resources. We at Mastercard have developed a specific program for our data scientists to donate some of their time in a more formal structure to organizations that they're interested in. Your organization can provide technical assistance and think about how you could, in a way that aligns with your core values and data sharing agreements, could bring some of your data assets to bear in much the same way that we've discussed with some of these other organizations. Volunteer, find a cause and offer your help. Sometimes I've found that just about all social impact organizations could use some help on the data side. And so if you have one with whom you work, ask them if they need help on that side. If you don't know where to go, you can connect with data.org or DataKind, who I mentioned earlier. They'll help match you up with the organizations that are in need of help. I also had on here, and I heard somebody talking about it earlier today, join a nonprofit board. We desperately need people that live and breathe data on more nonprofit boards. They bring a level of insight and dialogue to those boards that just isn't happening as much as it should. And the last one is just join the Data for Social Impact dialogue. If you look on LinkedIn, the most common hashtag is hashtag data for good, and you'll get more hits than you know what to do with. But join the dialogue and jump into the conversation, because that's really what we need. And so I look forward to having all of you join me in this effort to remove some of the blinders that are causing those social impact organizations to wind up on the proverbial freeway, and to enable them to succeed. And so with that, I will say thank you for your time today, and I'll open the floor up for a couple of questions or comments.
Right. We've got a lot of comments in here, and most of them are just hooray for what you've done in there. So, but in terms of questions in here, I think some of those things, how did you get engaged with this yourself? This is your job and your work and everything. How did you get engaged with this?
It is. I'm very lucky that it's my job. I've lived and breathed data for about the last 20 years, and there was an opportunity at Mastercard where we had these 4 pillars in our Center for Inclusive Growth, and we recently had an opening come up on our Data for Social Impact side, and I said I would love to bring some of my commercial and data experience into this role, because typically some of these roles have been occupied by career philanthropists and not data geeks like me, and so we thought this would be a good way to join the data geek with the philanthropic side and see what happens. Yeah.
What a perfect way to wrap up our day. I've got to thank you so much for the presentation and for all the things that you're doing. And I just want to echo this. I'm a member of the CIO Association of Canada, and we all stand up as one and say, if you're a CIO, if you're a CDO, if you've got this expertise, join a nonprofit board. Please, they need the expertise. They welcome the expertise. And when you see stories like this, you can see how much of a difference you can make. and it's a big one. And I've seen this all around the country. As a publisher, we tell the stories of and these are the best stories I love to tell.
Thank you for that, Jim.
Yeah.